真の工芸をご覧に入れよう。体と骨で。
Yo, what's up everyone, this is K Collections, and today's video will be a servant spotlight on Fergus. He's the newest 3-star Saber that will be released on the Thanksgiving event that's coming in just a day. So let's get started. So starting off with the illustration first, it definitely looks great. I really like the first 3 Ascension artwork because of the water waves in the background. However, the last Ascension artwork isn't really to my liking. It's not my style. Again, I mentioned this in my previous video. I much prefer a combat pose, but what do you guys think? Do you guys like the illustration? Do you guys hate it? I'd like to hear your opinion on it. Now what we're going to do is take a look at his stats. I compared Fergus with the other 3-star Sabers that are currently out. His attack is right in the middle with a starting attack of 1,385. If you decide to max level him, he'll then have an attack of 7,460. And if you choose to max scale him, he'll then have an attack of 10,096. Just a little bit under Julius Caesar, which isn't bad whatsoever. For his HP, he actually has the highest HP out of the 3-star Sabers. His starting HP is 1,761. If you max level him, he'll then have 9,786. Of course, if you max scale him, he'll then have an HP of 13,268. Next, we're going to talk about his star absorption and generation, along with his noble phantasm charge. So his star absorption is at 99, while his star generation is at 10%. Both are actually the same amount as Julius Caesar. For his noble phantasm charge, whenever he attacks, it's at 1.09%, which is just a little bit under Caesar's. For his NP charge, whenever he gets hit, it's a standard 3%, which is universal to the 3-star Sabers. Now taking a look at his attack cards, he has 1 Quick, 1 Arts, and 3 Buster, which is very unique to a Saber class. For the hit count, his Quick card does 2 hits, his Art card does 2 hits, his Buster does 1 hit, and for his extra attack it does 3 hits. And if you're curious, he does have a semi-reverse S growth curve. Moving on to his skill sets now, it has a lot of synergy, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later. They could work very well with each other. But let's talk about his first skill, Bravery A, which increases his own attack for 3 turns, anywhere from 10% upwards to 30% depending on the level. It also increases his debuff resistance for 3 turns, and that's anywhere from 20% upwards to 40%. So his first skill honestly is amazing, because Fergus can bust a Brave Chain, meaning if you activate this skill right before attacking, you'll do a lot of damage. Not to mention, if you Brave Chain with his Noble Phantasm, you're just going to destroy all your enemies. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll talk about his Noble Phantasm a little bit later. Let's move on to his second skill. His second skill is Restless Soul B, which increases his defense for 3 turns, anywhere from 15% upwards to 25%, but there is a downside to this skill. It basically reduces your attack buff success rate by 50%, and that lasts for 3 turns. So simply put, don't activate this skill before Bravery A. It's pretty self-explanatory because you don't want to waste your first skill if you activate Restless Soul first. So if you want to increase the attack first and then increase defense a little bit later. His last skill is Eye of the Mind True A, and we've seen this 1,000 times. A lot of servants have this. Basically, this gives you an evasion for 1 turn, which is excellent. It's situational, but it's a great skill to have just to keep your servant alive a lot longer and to dodge any Noble Phantasm attack your enemy may unleash on your team. Along with that, it also increases his defense for 3 turns, anywhere from 10% upwards to 20%. And like I mentioned earlier, his skill sets has a lot of synergy because basically his skills allow him to be not only a great damage dealer, but also a tank. Because he has 2 skills that increases his defense, and it could stack on top of each other. The order of skill usage I would recommend is, if you do activate Eye of the Mind first, then activate Bravery A if you haven't already, and then use the second skill to further increase his defense. So unlike Dermot, Fergus has a lot of synergy with his skills, and it works so well with each other. For his passive skill, he has Magic Resistance B, which increases resistance to debuffs by 17.5%. He also has a second passive skill, which is Riding B. Now, this increases his quick card performance by 8%, which doesn't really suit him because the majority of his attack cards are Buster, but it's better than nothing. Moving on to his Noble Phantasm, this honestly really suits Fergus. The reason why I say that is because first off, it's a buster type, meaning you can buster Brave Chain with his Noble Phantasm to do significant damage. So for the effects, it deals damage to all enemies, and it reduces defense of all enemies by 20% for 3 turns. It also reduces the debuff resistance of all enemies for 3 turns as well, so a lot of stuff going on here. You can also use his Noble Phantasm first to weaken all enemies and then chain it with a follow-up Noble Phantasm to do significant damage as well. Honestly, you have so much options with this attack. It's definitely great. Next, we're going to talk about his Ascension and skill materials that are required. He does require 5 hearts in total to max Ascend, which in my opinion is a heavy investment. Thankfully, his skill doesn't require such a heavy investment. The most challenging material I think would be hard to grind. Well, I wouldn't say hard to grind, but most difficult would probably be the crystal and maybe the shoe. Like I said, thankfully there's no scales or hearts needed for his skills, but in order to ascend him, those hearts are a bit challenging, especially with the relatively low drop rate. Unless you save these hearts from Gouda Gouda, then you have no problem ascending him. For the recommended craft essence, there's a few options, but I find these 3 to be quite good. Keep in mind, there's no specific order to these. So the first one is the Bond craft essence. So basically, when this is equipped with Fergus, it increases the buster card performance as well as the damage of NP attacks by 10% while he's on the field. Really good, especially when you're buster brave chaining with his Noble Phantasm to do a lot of damage. So moving on to the second craft essence I recommend, and this is actually the one I most recommend to people, is Limited Zero Over. Simply put, this increases performance of buster cards by 25%, and if you max limit break it, it then increases buster card by 30%. The reason why I recommend this is because Fergus has 4 buster cards in total, now 3 attack cards and 1 Noble Phantasm. So if you're looking to do heavy damage, then this is the craft essence I recommend. If you don't have this 5-star craft essence, I do also recommend the 4-star version. And this also goes well with the recommended servants that I'm going to talk about a bit later, as well as his skills that I mentioned earlier, where he increases his own attack. So he's going to be able to do massive damage. Lastly, Kaleidoscope, and again, pretty self-explanatory. I don't really recommend this unless you're struggling to fill his NP gauge. If you are, then this is the perfect craft essence to use for him. This also will go well for Fergus if you use a certain servant that I'm going to talk about right now, actually. So for the recommended servants, there's a lot of combinations, but I found these 2 to be really good. I do also encourage you to have at least 1 servant with a lot of buster cards so you could buster chain a lot more. But for William Shakespeare and Leonidas, first off, they're relatively easy to get. They're only 2 stars, and you could get them on the Friends Gacha if you haven't gotten them already. And besides that, their skill sets are really helpful for Fergus. So let's break down Shakespeare first and why I recommend him. His first skill is Enchant A, which increases party's buster card performance for 1 turn. Pretty self-explanatory right there. Fergus has 3 buster card, not including his Noble Phantasm. And Fergus can also increase his own damage with his own skill. Furthermore, if you use Enchant A, that just deals a lot more damage. And if you also equip the Limited Zero Craft Essence, that's even more damage on top. Moving on to Shakespeare's second skill that could help Fergus is King's Trope C, which charges an ally's Noble Phantasm gauge by 20%. So this is really helpful for Fergus because he can't really charge his Noble Phantasm really quickly because he lacks arts cards. So this is a great way to just give him that extra boost. And also, this skill goes well if you equip Kaleidoscope with Fergus, because if you equip Kaleidoscope, clearly Fergus will have 80% already charged. And if you use this skill on the spot, he'll have 100% Noble Phantasm ready to be used at any time. So Shakespeare is really great. I highly recommend him. But now we're going to take a look at Leonidas. So the reason why I put Pride of the Renegade A as a helpful skill for Fergus is because, for example, if you're facing archers, this is a great skill to really draw all the damage to Leonidas, who has a resistance towards archer. So initially, Leonidas could tank all the damage that could have been dealt to Fergus, thus saving him. Leonidas also have a second skill that can really help Fergus, and that's Warrior's Warcry B. This is similar to Shakespeare's first skill, where it increases performance of all buster cards for all party members, but instead of just 1 turn, it's for 3 turns. meaning for 3 whole turns you could deal significant damage and really destroy all your enemies. So these 2 are the recommended servants, and again, there's a lot of other combinations you could make. If you have any servants or craft essence that you think will work well with Fergus that I missed, feel free to comment down below and let me know. The Thanksgiving event is just 1 day away. I'm really excited, and it's gonna be great, guys. I know things are moving so fast. It's overwhelming, but in a good way. Best of luck if you're summoning on the banners, and if you're planning to summon on the paid gacha, I wish you the best of luck on getting the servant you really want. For me, again, it's Tamamo, and of course I'll be pulling for Scathach and probably Gilgamesh, so wish me luck on those as well. I really hope the gacha gods favor me when I summon them. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like button if you did, and subscribe to my channel as I'll be doing a lot more Fate Grand Order videos. And don't forget to comment down below and let me know which servant you're most excited to get and use. Best of luck, and just remember to have fun. Till next time, guys, have an awesome day. I wish you all the best of luck.